Welcome to the Pregnancy Help Podcast. I'm Delaney from Extend Web Services, and this is another episode of Marketing Minute. Design is one of those things nonprofits know matters, but it often gets pushed to the side. It can feel optional, cosmetic, or like something you'll get to later. But in reality, design is often the very first experience someone has with your organization. Before someone reads your mission, before they understand your services, before they can decide whether they trust you. Today, we're talking about why design matters in a nonprofit context, especially for pregnancy help organizations, and what good design actually looks like in practice. Not trends for trend's sake and not perfection, but design that communicates calm, clarity, and credibility. I'm joined by our design and social media specialist, Morgan, and our customer support specialist, Cindy. And together, we're going to walk through why design matters, what works, what doesn't, and how nonprofits can approach design well, no matter their budget. Okay, Morgan, Cindy, how are you guys feeling?
I am feeling great. It's like one of my favorite topics to talk about,
And
no
what
doubt.
about you, Morgan?
I feel good. I'm excited to discuss kind of our world of design with our audience. I'm excited to give insight to just what we're seeing and things that we're seeing day to day that are working well or maybe not working well, and just excited to nerd out a little bit.
You guys will be nerding out. It's funny because typically when we do these Marketing Minute podcasts, I'm feeling excited. And not that I'm not excited. I just typically have a better grasp on what we're going to be talking about. But this is very firmly, the world of design is very firmly your guys' world of expertise. And when we talked about what we wanted to share with pregnancy help team members, leaders, design obviously came up for both of you. You guys have been doing a ton of design projects internally for Extend. Um, and I didn't have much to add to the conversation, but I very much enjoyed hearing you guys talk about it. And you guys were really passionate about why design and good design matters for nonprofits. So I honestly think we should just start there, like just off the cuff. Cindy, why is it that you're so passionate about good design when it comes to nonprofits?
I think for me, it's because I've seen a lot of bad design, and it does such a disservice to organizations, businesses, to have poor design. I've been kind of in this visual communication design world for over 20 years now, which is crazy to say. Actually, wish I hadn't said that because now I feel like an old lady. But it's like the more I learned about design, the more I could recognize, what's good design, what's bad design, why it matters, what things matter, what things don't matter. And so it's really just kind of become a passion of mine over the years. And it really is kind of rooted in a place of wanting to see organizations win, wanting to see them succeed, and knowing that this is really a key part to that success. Truly,
Sure. Morgan, why were you so excited to talk about this topic?
I think going off of what Cindy was talking about,
Mm-hmm.
I it's the same thing. Like, you want to see these organizations and these companies succeed. And I went through all the schooling talking about like the do's and the don'ts of design and what what to focus on and what you should never do, what you should always do. And I think it's hard because, like, I want to be able to help everybody, and I'm not saying by any means that
Mm-hmm.
I'm perfect at design. I know for a fact I look at designs, I'm like, oh, I was taught that I shouldn't do this, and I still did it. So daily there are still those moments, but I think it's just like people that haven't been able to, or didn't have the opportunity to go to schooling for that. They went to schooling for something else or
Mm-hmm.
be in the world of design. I feel like just little things like this where we can just kind of open what, like, Cindy and I have studied for such a long time,
Mm-hmm.
um, just to share a little bit, little tips and tricks of like simple things you can do that actually make your life easier in the design world. So just giving a little bit of what we're so passionate about, that and hoping it helps people that are listening.
I like it. I do think we need buy-in. So we know why you guys are both excited to talk about this, but the buy-in for the listener, because as someone who at one point was a director of advancement, development director at a pregnancy center, I just felt like I didn't have a ton of time, and design was not one of my skill sets. I did try and worked at it, but it was difficult, and it was one more thing on top of everything else. So what is the buy-in here? Like what's the impact of good design at a PHO? What's the impact of bad design?
I think one thing that Morgan and I have talked about before is how good design, good intentional design really, obviously, it builds your brand out, and sometimes it's kind of hard to wrap our mind around, organizations needing a consistent brand, because when you think of that, you think of, that maybe on more of a corporate level, but really it really needs to be addressed in nonprofits too. I mean, you really want to kind of
Mhm.
build out how you are, what you look like to people outside of your organization. And so obviously building that brand, building trust with your potential clients, with your current and potential supporters. You want to stand out against the rest, especially in pro-life pregnancy help world. There's a lot of noise out there,
Mhm.
and so you want to be consistent with how you stand out, and you want to, create connection. There's literally so many things that contribute to why good design is important. But yeah, it helps clarify your mission, your message. What are you trying to portray to people who want to learn more about you? Women you're trying to reach. I know Morgan might have more to add. I know we've talked about this a number of times. Um, yeah, there's just so much. It's a long list.
I think what I might be missing here, and for the people who aren't maybe design oriented and stuff, and I know either one of you guys could answer this, is how does it do those things? How does it connect with clients? Like, how does good design connect with supporters? How does it help build trust? How does it um, just do the things that you were listing? Like, good design can do these things, but like, how?
I think, to put it simply, I feel like what people might not realize is that design is often their first touch point. So
Mhm.
before they even talk to you or see your building or so on and so forth, they will already have some sort of reaction or feeling from your brand, and that goes beyond just like your logo and colors, but like the fonts you use, how you say things, the layout of your graphics on social media. Like Cindy said, it can go on and on, the list of like how design matters. But I think just knowing that for a lot of people, it is the first thing they hear, see, know about you, and they already have, I don't say their mind made up because that seems very like final, but they already have an idea of what you're like. So design is such a huge role in that because it starts even before they start talking to you.
Yeah, I don't want to jump ahead or anything, but something you said sparked something in my brain. Um, Even if you have like branding or like an online presence or whatever, I know we'll get into this more, but when you said about the first impression, even if you have like a long standing, rhythm or whatever with design and things you're putting out there, everything is a potential to be the first impression for someone that is interacting
Mhm.
with your organization. And so that's why like the consistency matters. It might be the 1,000 post you've made or flyer you've put out. But if
Yeah.
that's not also as good as it's been before or as good as it can be, it's still potentially a first impression for somebody. So it's important that you kind of have some, you know, um, things in place to where you're going to hit that mark every single time with everything you put out.
Something else that comes to mind, like just going off of what you guys are saying, is whether or not you have a design eye, whether or not that is your skill set. I feel like on some level, humans, we react maybe subconsciously to things. Like I heard once that people who have asymmetrical faces tend to be seen as like more beautiful. They may not be labeled the most beautiful person in the world, but like Denzel Washington apparently has a very symmetrical face and has consistently like scored. I'm not going to go down that rabbit trail, but like there's something about like symmetry that subconsciously we we respond to. And so whether or not you know what is good design or isn't, something that is clean and looks good and I don't know, in terms of design is appealing to you. I feel like that is maybe part of how design can help build trust or something. Yes, the consistency. But also subconsciously people just responding maybe in a positive or negative way based on how your overall look is. Is that a thing at all?
Yeah, I think 100%, and that's maybe where a little bit of a disconnect is because, um, like, at the end of the day, design is a form of art, obviously, and art
Mm-hmm.
is subjective. Everyone has an opinion on what's actually good and what's not, and that's why there's so many variables in, different branding and tones and voices and things, and, again, something we're probably gonna jump into later, but, um, I, it regardless, though, whether you are an
Mm-hmm.
expert designer or just some person walking down the street and see a flyer on a light post, everyone can look at something and know. Maybe not necessarily, is this good design, is this bad design, but you can look at it and be like, I like this or I
Yeah.
don't like this. And a lot of that is related to what's happening in the design. How is the information being presented? Um, and so you might not know what you like about it, what's good about it, but some designer somewhere has used some technique that's drawn you in or kind of like giving you the ick? And so obviously having those skills to create it is one thing, but it can be received and like stir up emotion in anyone who actually sees it,
Oh, yeah.
good
And
or
it's also
bad.
interesting. Like, if you see, regardless of whether or not you know anything about fashion, if you see someone dressed a certain way, you might make assumptions about who they are
Mhm.
or the skill sets they have. And I think sometimes it's similar with design. Like, I think that you could be even like a small center or like a small maternity home or organization or something, and people feel like you have a very like loud presence or very professional. You have everything together because what you are presenting matches whatever they think like a high tech organization or something looks like, which I think is so fascinating about
Mhm.
design, like really just putting that best foot forward. And the thing is we know this, everybody's wearing a ton of hats, especially at PHOs. So so if we've made the case for like design is important, it doesn't change the fact that they've got a lot going on. They have, sometimes there's limited budgets. Um, every cent is accounted for. So how can people go about either finding, like, I don't know, either what resources are available, what trainings are available, how would they go about doing this, especially if they don't have somebody on their team who's a Morgan or a Cindy?
The good thing is that even if you don't think you're good at design, with a few helpful tools, you can make it work if you're on that limited budget. Um, that's what's so incredible about like this day and age is that there are so many resources out there that you can make work for any budget. There's something that you can tap into at every level, but there are so many like free resources or extremely low cost resources that you can kind of take advantage of to create some good design or good branding for your center.
Nice.
Um, I don't Morgan might have some that she could recommend. I know Canva is one that we've both used a number of times. That's very popular right now.
Um, Adobe Express is another it's an Adobe product, but there might be, I'm not positive on this. There might be a way you can get it without the whole suite. But Adobe Express is very much like a Canva layout. Um, so I do know that, but Canva I feel like is the one that 99% of people have at least heard of. Um, so that's always at the top of my list when people ask about like design platforms because Canva has, I think they have a free a free membership, don't they?
Yeah, they do,
That's
and,
limited?
I think they also have, a nonprofit membership too that's,
Mm,
pretty deeply discounted if I remember correctly. But yeah, there's so many platforms like that to where you have a great starting point, to be able to utilize for flyers or even branding. Like if you're needing to rebrand and do a logo, obviously, if you want someone that's kind of like professional in that scope can really offer great guidance, but if it's just absolutely not in the budget, that's a great place to go, to also. But even if you're like you're volunteer based too, um, if you're struggling with design, there is someone out there surely that supports you that has a design eye that might be willing to give of their time freely to help you out. And so there's lots of options, especially with different budgets. Yeah, volunteer, student intern. If there's a university or college locally that has a visual communication program, they're always looking for opportunities to intern. I know when I was in college, we used to do every spring. It was called the Designathon, and all of the visual communication majors would meet for a 12-hour block on a Saturday in the spring, and we would just knock out projects for local nonprofits,
That's
logos,
cool.
flyers, all the things. And so there's lots of opportunities even for things like that if you're on a limited or zero budget when it comes to design for your organization.
I think the important thing would be figuring out what your brand colors and stuff are going to look. What's your brand color? What approach are you going to take? Is there like an overall look? Like, are you guys, this is not going to come out right, but like, is your overall look more like angular? Or is it like, you know, a little bit, what would I say? Curvy? Fluid? Are, do you want
A
people to feel
non-designer reaching for design words.
exactly. Do you want it to be like warm and relatable? Is it something that's like very professional, like empowering and confident? Like what is the overall look that you're wanting, especially before you start pulling people in, which might help you with some consistency. But really, what I think could help you once you figure out, yes, I want to make sure we've got some quality design. This is how we're going to go about doing it. I think Morgan and Cindy, you guys have some do's and don'ts that we're going to really dive into now about design.
yeah, we have just a few for each, but they kind of go off of everything that we've been talking about so far of just trends we're seeing. And
Hmm.
Cindy hit it very well. Like, these are just things that should help you. Like, if you're doing it on your own, if you have a team member or volunteer helping, like, they're not rules, but they're just like
Hmm.
little tips and tricks that might help you if you're worried, like, oh, I'm not a designer. That's not my specialty. These things, if you follow the do's of like what's trending in
Hmm.
2026, it should be very, very helpful. And I hope it is. But um the first and one that we've kind of been talking about a lot recently is just to have very clean and uncluttered designs.
Okay.
Especially with PHOs, it's just when you have too much going on, people aren't going to look. They're going to keep scrolling. They're not going to get
Hmm.
their eye caught by what's on there. And they're already in a state of maybe fear or worry or a mind space where they need something very clean and simple and something they can understand right away. Because if they're looking at something super overwhelming, that's not going to help them find the calmness or the trust they need to
Hmm.
maybe reach out to you. So that's probably, in my opinion, that might be one of like the most important dues that I've seen, just because when I am on social media or even a website or any platform and something's like overbearing or just in my face, I don't want to look at it because it makes me feel anxious and it makes me feel stressed. So that's probably my first due of design.
I definitely think we need to stop real quick and just kind of give an example of what that looks like. So I know for you, Morgan, when you're designing up social media for extend customers, something you might do is um, have a very kind of softer background, a little bit more natural look. And then you might have something that just says, "You are not alone." And those are, you have a woman, some design elements, like very light, and then a short statement that you can sometimes expand on the um, in the text box. And there's also a logo typically on the design. Is that what you mean by kind of more of a clean and
Yeah.
uncluttered look?
Yeah, absolutely. Which also the next do that I would think about is actually the color palette you use because it
Oh,
kind of goes with the clean and uncluttered vibe I'm talking about. Because right now a lot of colors that people are liking and
hmm,
using a lot are very soft and modern and more like a pastel kind of look.
okay.
So when you talk about like a very light or soft background, that's kind of what I'm thinking of like very soft tones. Like if I see a post that's like a very bright red,
Hmm.
I'm probably going to get a little overwhelmed by that. Especially if it's joined with type that's very bold or aggressive. That's just it's very alarming.
Hmm.
So using those soft colors they're very inviting, very welcoming, and that's how you can easily communicate like that trustworthiness or like the calm presence that you don't need to say a lot for someone to look and be like, "Oh, I like that. I want to
Sure.
look at more things they do," or whatever it may be, but yes, going off of like the what I would say, it's like things like "you're heard" or "we're here when you're ready." Like calls to action that aren't like you need to do this now, but like we are here and you don't need to be super aggressive with those because if people see a very soft tone
Hmm.
and see that kind of verbiage, they're going to be like, "Oh, I feel like I could trust that brand or trust what they're saying." So, yeah, very very soft and non-aggressive graphics is kind of what we're talking about.
Okay. So we've got an uncluttered look, soft, modern color palette. And then what would be our next thing we're watching out for?
So, next goes off of the fonts you use.
Okay.
And as much as I love a good script font,
Don't we all?
there are there are times where there are a lot of script fonts out there that are beautiful, but
Hmm.
not very easy to read. And when you're thinking about the audience you're trying to reach,
Hmm.
you probably have only about 3 seconds to catch their attention, which when you
Sure.
think about that, that is not a lot of time at all. So you wanna make sure the fonts you're using are readable first and foremost, and you don't want it to clash with, like, the colors you're using or the graphics you're using.
Hmm.
And so that kinda goes off of what we talked about just a few minutes ago of, like, you don't want a bold color and a bold font, like, you wanna have good harmony.
Hmm.
Um, but the most important thing, you don't wanna make it hard for your audience to read what you're trying to say. Um, so
That makes
yeah.
sense. There have been
Yeah.
times where I've been scrolling and I was like, man, that's a great design. I have no idea what those words say. It looks cool, but if I'm supposed to be able to read it, it's not hitting the mark.
Yep. Yep. That the note about the fonts kind of goes back. All of these kind of play into each other and piggyback on to each other.
Hmm.
But because even with the like the non-cluttered design, choosing the wrong font can instantly make a design feel cluttered or
That's true.
overbearing. Um,
Right.
and with that readability aspect, and and Morgan saying minimal seconds that we have to try to catch someone's eye. Um, Too much info they're not going to read. Something that's difficult to see they're not going to read, and so you really have to hit these marks to make sure that you can grab someone almost instantly with whatever it is you're putting out there. Um, But one thing for fonts that I learned early on that's such a good rule of thumb, and another one of these like little tips that even if you're not a design person and you're just trying to do the best you can for your center is limit yourself if you're doing a logo or I mean a flyer,
Mhm.
excuse me, limit yourself to like 2 fonts max. Maybe 3 if you're experienced and can make it work. But if you are trying to kind of set some guidelines for yourself as far as good design goes,
Mhm.
stick to 2 fonts max, and that's usually maybe like a headline font, something that's a little bit more stylized, and then
Okay.
some, a basic body font that kind of coordinates with it. Um, and one thing that I always try to do is you don't want those 2 fonts to match because if you try to make them match and they don't, it's like, is that an accident? Were they trying to?
Right.
So you want to make it look intentional. So
Okay.
go with a good headline font and then kind of a secondary supporting font for all of the bulk of your information. And even with logos too, stick to one main font and maybe a secondary one for, a tagline
Mhm.
or whatnot. But and again, that all goes back and contributes to if whatever you're putting out there is going to look cluttered, is going to be overwhelming, is going to hit or miss that mark whenever you're trying to reach people.
Yeah, I wonder if sometimes the approach in the past has just been like you have to get in front of somebody's face and catch their eyes so they're looking at your design, but it does seem like more and more if something causes even subconscious like stress, people are just going to scroll by. Um and I know we've hit on the uncluttered look, soft colors, quality fonts, and I love the notes you gave Cindy about like how many. That's so practical. But I know that we still have a couple more, and one of them has to deal with imagery. So, Morgan, I'm just curious, what kinds of images tend to resonate most with people who may already be overwhelmed? Like if we're looking at trying to make more of that calmer social
Mhm.
media image.
What I have been seeing a lot more recently, and it goes off of actually the
Mhm.
color comment as well. Pictures that have those same kind of soft tones,
Mhm.
or even like I've used images of like a young woman who's like just walking outside on a trail or
Yeah.
walking. And this is going off of stock photos, specifically, but, pictures that aren't alarming or, like, super busy, just very
Mhm.
simple, like, simple tones, I guess, is the best way to put it. But I will say, if you wanna take that next step and give a really personal feel,
Mhm.
putting images of in center or in home pictures will really, really boost your personal feel, I guess
Mhm.
I'm trying to say. So like a picture of your front door, like what it looks like to walk into your center or your home or your organization really makes that relatable touch to your social media or your website or your design in general. Um, and I'm not saying all stock images are bad because I use stock images and I do think there's a good place for them. Um, but it's also important to know like you want your stock images that you pick to kind of match the tone of like what you want to accomplish or what your center, the tone you want to give off or your home wants to give off.
Yeah.
Um, and that goes off of like the very personal feel of like obviously for pregnancy centers wanting to reach that 18 to 25-year old audience. You don't really wanna put a random picture of, like, I don't know, animals in, like, a field on your social media. Like, as
Okay.
cute as that would be,
Yeah.
it's not gonna resonate with your audience. Or you don't want, like, a picture of you and friends in a very, like, loud environment just because that's probably not what your audience wants to see. Um, and I know those are silly examples, but just talking about, like, there is power in stock, but there's power for good and there's power for
They're
not
not
good.
they're not silly examples. This was years ago before I knew better, but I'm just thinking about some of the choices I made for social media posts that are still on the center, the center I worked at. I think they should go through and maybe delete some of the old posts that I was in charge of before I knew. And it wasn't far off the mark, baby animals and stuff. So what you're saying is not a ridiculous suggestion. Someone else may be out there doing doing what I did back in the day. Um, so Morgan, round it out. So we have had 4 solid do's for design. What is the final thing you're wanting them to take away before we go through some don'ts?
The final thing I think is important would be just creating that calm and confident messaging.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that it kind of rounds out everything that we've discussed in the do's of you want your copy and your design to work together. You don't want them to compete or contradict one another. Um, and so it goes before even you start designing, it goes with what do you want to say with your design? Do you want to talk about like how you're trustworthy, or do you want to talk about how you're confident in your ability to help them? Or
Mm-hmm.
I think just understanding what you want to say before you design it really helps you in the design process, because then you kind of have the feeling of like, oh, this font is calm and like this design feels trustworthy to me. You want it all to work together. And that kind of goes on with everything we talked about, the fonts, the colors, the imagery. Um, you don't want to try and put everything in one design. You want to make sure they all work together. Um, and your messaging is so important because you can have the messaging of confidence saying, like I said earlier, we're here when you're ready, but you don't really want urgent messaging that's like, oh, you have to act now or else you won't have time or you won't
Right.
be able to do anything. Like you want messaging that um, really embarks what you want your audience to hear, and you don't want to work against yourself in how you design. So it's kind of just the combination of all the other do's of you want to have that calm yet confident tone without sounding, I guess, too anxious or too urgent, if that makes sense.
Yeah, you want it to be inviting and to make it clear that if they need to act, that you're ready to act as a PHO, but it's not something that you're making them do or making them feel. One of the things that I like about your dues, Morgan, is that I see you following these every month. I didn't realize that there were dues working behind the scenes, but every single thing you listed, if you pull up one of the posts that you make every month for Extend customers, you follow these. And I'm really excited to jump into the don'ts because I've got 2 designers on this call with me. And I feel like there are probably a lot of opinions about design mistakes and things to stay away and things you guys might have learned that people can learn from your mistakes instead of experiencing the pain like you might have. So let's dive into it. What is what is the first don't that you want to warn people away from?
Don't
Yeah.
use Microsoft
So
Word. Stay out of
I
Microsoft
second
Word.
that.
We've got our
I
first
second
don't
that.
right out of the gate.
Yes. I don't want to like, shame anybody,
Hmm.
but just step away from the Microsoft Office suite
I feel like
software
It's gonna
in
it's
general.
not gonna help you. It's gonna make you more stressed using Microsoft Word.
I think this I
Absolutely.
we should definitely just rapid fire this. Like just we got already got it. So like don't use Microsoft. What is our next one?
Yeah.
Chasing every single trend,
Mhm.
because it's
Mhm.
gonna get very tiring, and it's not gonna help you because
It's not.
it's gonna overdo it, and then you're gonna feel stressed about all these trends because there are always trends and they always change. So you need to find the trends that work well for you.
Exactly. You do need to find the trends that
Yes.
work well for you. And one of the things that Morgan's been talking about on, I think, some of these podcasts, but also just at Extend when we've had conversations internally, authentic. Authenticity is the big thing for social media in 2026. And sometimes if you jump on a trend that does not fit your area of expertise, your organization, or whatever, then it comes across seeming inauthentic. And I don't even know if this word's popular anymore, but cringe.
Yeah.
It's so true though, because you think about authenticity, like Delaney said, is the biggest trend because there's so much AI in our
Hmm.
world, which sometimes is great. But for social media specifically, AI is everywhere. It's everywhere you look. And so, how do you stand out? Well,
Yeah.
you're authentic. You show who you really are. And so, if you're trying to chase all the trends, it's not going to benefit you. It probably will just make you very overwhelmed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and not all trends speak to every audience either, and that's
Hmm.
something you kind of
Mhm.
have to discern as well. Is like, who is my audience? Which obviously that's kind of the preliminary work that Delaney mentioned earlier that you're needing to kind of narrow down, but not all trends is going to serve your audience. It's not all trends is going to reach your audience, and so you really have to
Hmm.
figure out like what is worth trying out, what is worth, and not all trends are good. Some trends are just bad.
We
Or
feel very
maybe that's
passionate about this
yeah.
one. I feel like the only thing that you guys might feel more passionate about is not using Comic Sans.
Very passionate about that. Very
Yep,
passionate
that is true.
about not using Comic Sans. Again, but if you stay out of Microsoft Word, you should be
You'll be
good.
fine.
Your risk
Oh,
is
They go
lower.
hand in
So
hand.
I mean, there are some fonts on Canva that kind of look a little bit like Comic Sans to me, my untrained
That is
eye.
that's
true.
true. That's true.
Okay.
That's true. Stay away
So
from those two.
my contribution was the Comic Sans one. What's next? What else are we warning people away from?
So I am actually going to loop my next two together because I feel
Okay,
like they
go for it.
they kind of go hand in hand, and they're actually just the opposite of a couple of the do's that we talked about. So the first one is overcrowding your graphics because, like I said earlier, a graphic that has too much, it's not going to give clear messaging, and it's not going to give the feeling of trust. It's not going to give the feeling of the invitation to contact them or to go see them. And the other one is the harsh or alarming visuals, which we kind of talked
Hmm.
about earlier with don't really want bright and bold colors with bright or not bright, but bold and aggressive fonts. Like you want to make
Hmm.
sure that your designs are cohesive, and I feel like overcrowding and the harsh or alarming visuals kind of go hand in hand because they just usually those harsh and alarming visuals overcrowd your graphics or your design. So things that in my mind are harsh or alarming would be like the harsher alarming colors. So that bright red or bright green or just the very like vibrant colors. There's a time for
Hmm.
them, but probably not all at once. There's also the aggressive typography or even another example could be too many calls to action. If you're
Hmm.
telling them to do multiple things, they're not going to know what they're actually supposed to do. So, just making sure that you are simplifying your designs and I mean, in all honesty, that's less you have to do because it's less you're typing or less you're putting together.
Hmm.
Um you don't want someone to look at your graphic and be like, "Oh wow, that is a lot going on in that," because it's not gonna resonate with them. It might resonate, but not in a positive way.
Yeah.
Um,
And if
so
Morgan
just yeah.
sees that on one of your social media pages or in like a banquet flyer you have, she'll give it two thumbs down, like Ebert and Roper used to do for films.
But yeah, so those are the 2 that I would go together, but it also now looking at my other one, it also goes hand in hand with inconsistent styles. I mean,
Tell What about inconsistent styles? What does that even mean to
yeah,
the non-designers out there?
well, you can see a theme of what Cindy and I specifically are saying, please don't do this because it will not help you." Inconsistent styles.
Okay.
That goes right off of what Cindy was talking about with your font selection. So, if you have 6 fonts that are all different, it's
Mhm.
gonna be pure chaos, and it's gonna be very
Okay.
confusing trying to look at that, and it's just I don't know, I think it adds confusion, which means that delays, like, what their ability to read because 'cause they're trying to figure out, like, what is going on.
Okay.
So styles is in, like, design styles, so you don't want colors that are clashing
Mhm.
because it's not gonna be visually appealing,
Okay.
things that are close to matching, but not matching, like Cindy was talking about the fonts, like, you don't wanna pick 2 fonts that are just close enough that they could match to some people, but people that see the differences, they're like, either someone messed up or I don't know.
Man.
So you don't wanna clash styles. That's kind of what I'm talking about with this. Cindy, you can piggyback if you have anything to add, but that's kind of what I was going off of for this.
Yeah, the inconsistent styling or basically everything comes down to also if you have all of this kind of chaotic stuff happening in your design, it's going to make it difficult for whoever's looking at it to understand like what information takes hierarchy in this design. What is important that I am trying to gain from this information? What do I need to pay attention to? And so it just kind of throws everything into confusion. It's like, well, is this important? Is this important? Because you're just eye and is going all over the place. Your brain doesn't know what to process first and what to kind of like put above the rest. Um, and so all of it just kind of ties back into where we started with the do's, and that's, be consistent, be kind of calm, avoid that chaos. And just it all of it ties together. So
When you were talking about inconsistent styles initially, I didn't know you went on to explain, like, using different fonts and the colors clashing and everything, but I didn't know if you meant, like, in one of your designs, you look like you were inspired by Rugrats from the '90s, and another design, you look like you were inspired from Fantasia or something.
Oh,
So it's
yeah.
not so does that count too? Like, if you're
Oh,
like
absolutely.
okay.
Mhm. Because what Cindy was just saying with, like, one of the most important things in design is
Mhm.
consistency. But if I'm looking at, say, a social media page of, like, all your graphics and like you said, Delaney, like, none of them really match,
Yeah.
it's not gonna it's not gonna click for me that, like, "Oh, this is the same." Like, you wanna be recognized,
Mhm.
and earlier, Cindy was talking about, like, oh, you don't know which design they're gonna see your audience is gonna see first. And so you don't want them to, like, see a design and then see another one and not recognize it. Like, you want your audience to recognize you by your designs and what you choose to put out there. And
Mhm.
so if you have all these different kinds of styles and
Mhm.
trends going on in your designs, people aren't gonna know who you are. And for PHS specifically, like, that's so important that they know your brand and who you
Yeah.
are. And so absolutely it covers that as well because you wanna make sure you have that consistent
Mhm.
feel of everything you put out there.
So we've tried to make a case for why design matters at your pregnancy help organization. We've talked a little bit about how you can do that on any budget, although I think we want to circle back to that in just a minute. We've hit some do's and don'ts. Like once, you were convinced, okay, this is important. Well, these are some things to do, these are some things to avoid. I really want to dive a little deeper before we close out. Um, and just really giving some practical tips. So one of the things that I've heard you guys say a couple of times on design is like just the colors clashing. And so I remember one of the design teams I worked with in the past, I think they had a color wheel. Is that something that would make it easier for people to know what colors they can put together, especially like say their brand that they have and they're not changing anytime soon does have brighter colors. Could they use something like a color wheel to help them tone it down a little bit?
I think you can definitely implement that to
Mhm.
make better choices as far as colors go. I took a college class, and the entire class, a full semester class, was just over color theory, color psychology, all of it. And when I signed up, I was like, well, this will be a fun, easy class. But I wasn't even ready for how in depth we got about color. And I'm glad you brought this back up because Morgan had said something earlier about choosing the assuring colors. And it's so true because that's why when you look at um, branding, specifically for food, restaurants, sodas, there's
Mhm.
a lot of reds. You know, there's like Coca-Cola red, there's McDonald has red and orange, red and yellow.
Right.
Um, like Kit Kat. So all
Mhm.
of these, because that is a very like aggressive color, like aggressive, you want this, like draw them in, and kind of like a reactive way. And then it's also the reason why you see a lot of financial institutions and churches using colors like navy blue and,
Mhm.
you know, forest green. Those are a little bit more as far as like color psychology goes, the trustworthy colors. And so in the
Right.
middle there, you've got these kind of calmer tones that Morgan, pulls from a lot for a lot of the things that she designs because it's kind of soothing in that
Mhm.
scroll. Um, so there's that part about color psychology, but then also if you're wanting to kind of like experiment with color, you can definitely take into consideration, complementary colors, things that look good together.
Yeah,
Um,
complimentary. That's what I was trying to
Complementary
remember.
colors, yeah. You do have to be careful though with complementary colors because in looking at the color wheel, and this is anything, you can go to Pinterest and look up, like color combos or color wheels or complementary
Canva
colors and
has one
find.
too.
Canva has one too, yeah, along with I think Adobe Express has one as
Yeah.
well. Um, but you do have to be careful there because, like you've got red and green are complementary colors, but if you overlap them,
Christmas.
yeah, they're reactive to each other. So if you overlap like a true red and a true green
Yeah.
with each other, which we see a lot in, Christmas themed graphics, they kind of vibrate against each other and that can almost kind of give an unsettling feeling. So do have to be kind of careful in that regard. Um, but it's a great tool. It's a great tool. And because there are so many free resources and, blogs, webinars, just short information, you can go look on Instagram and I'm sure find tips on how to work colors together. Um, but it's definitely something worth doing research on to find ones that are going to work for what you're wanting it to.
I do think one of the great things about this is there are so many people who've probably already done the work. So I have no doubt you could get on TikTok,
Mhm.
Instagram, YouTube, and like look up color theory or just videos on that or how to's, or even looking at a specific color and get information there. Cindy, I know that you also had some other, at least one other resource. If you're working on a conservative budget, I know you mentioned like, hey, there's interns, you like look at your
Mhm.
volunteer base, but I know there was at least one other platform out there.
Yeah.
Um, was there anything else you wanted to add about the conservative budgets?
Yeah, so obviously little to no budget. We talked about
Mm-hmm.
Canva, we talked about Adobe Express, enlisting a volunteer, intern, things like that. You can also use AI sparingly.
Sparingly. Morgan's going
Sparingly.
to come through the screen if you
She
don't
is.
say sparingly.
I always like to say that AI is a fantastic tool, but should never be
Hmm.
your full solution. So it's a great tool for helping you get to whatever you're trying to get to, but should not be your full solution. So keep that in mind. But as far as kind of that middle of the road conservative budget,
Hmm.
um, you can definitely find or support on an as needed basis for those things.
Hmm.
Especially if you want if your budget is still somewhat limited, but you really want to make this a priority and you want
Yeah,
to focus, okay, we really want to, plan this into our budget around our banquet time, around our pickleball tournament or whatever spring fundraiser and fall banquet or whatever you have going on. Um, there are so many kind of like freelance services. Like there's freelance
sure.
designers,
Hmm.
and all of those will be on like an as need basis. So freelance designers, there's I'm sure local designers in each local area. There
Hmm.
are websites. One that I've used before personally, which is so funny because like being a designer, I'll still tap into these resources when I don't have
Right.
time to do things
That's
myself.
smart.
But there's Fiverr, which is a great one, which is kind of like a hub for freelance designers. And you could scroll for days and so many talented designers on there.
Fiverr. That one
Fiverr.
it's spelled weird, right? It's
Yeah.
like
Fiverr.
Okay.
And I think they have an app too, which is pretty easy to
I think so.
utilize. And then obviously there are marketing partners like Extend where you can hire in for specific design projects or jobs or things that you need help with. And then you can even maybe put a part-time designer on staff or just during fundraising season. It's like those stores that hire Christmas help.
Seasonal help.
Hire a designer for seasonal banquet seasonal help.
Yeah, that's
Um,
smart.
but yeah, so obviously, like the free no budget is going to be doing a lot of things yourself. You know, your conservative budget is going to be outsourcing on an as needed basis.
Hmm.
So, marketing partners like Extend, freelance designers locally or on websites like Fiverr. Etsy also is great. That's a lot of
Hmm.
pre-made things, but affordable. And then, seasonal help with or part-time designers during those fundraising seasons. So
I like it. I like it a lot. Okay, Morgan, Cindy, we've talked about a lot of things during this episode. Is there anything that you feel really strongly about that you want to reiterate, or anything else that you just haven't felt like you've had a chance to say yet?
I think we just barely scratched the surface, honestly. Like we could probably just keep talking for like another 2 hours and I'd probably find something design related I could just yap about.
Director's
But
cut.
yeah, the extended version. The
Oh,
extended version. Honestly, it's great. Now I think to sum it up for me personally and would be to um make design a priority, be intentional with it,
hmm.
and do your due diligence to research um, on your own, especially if you have a limited budget, things that you can do to kind of get a leg up as far as how you're presenting yourself um, visually, design wise. So,
Sounds good. Morgan?
Don't let design scare you.
Sure.
Um, just because there's a lot. I mean, there's a lot. There's a lot about design. There are a lot of things you can do, but like Cindy said, there are so many resources to help you with design, but also just to learn about it. And so I think a lot of people can be intimidated by doing design or like trying to schedule it or trying to find time to do it. And
Hmm.
I think my one word of advice would just be to don't let it scare you, because I think once you kind of get your rhythm of like what you want to get out there and how often or what do you want it to look like, I think it can actually be a really fun thing for you to
Hmm.
do. And I think some people view it as like a very scary chore,
Yeah.
but I may be biased, but I think it could turn into a very fun part of your job that is more relaxing than stressful.
I think that's great. And hopefully your experience will be like mine. If you are somebody who design, it does not come naturally. Sometimes you can do just enough to get the job done. When I was at the center and I was having to do some design work, God brought an amazing person right after me to be on my team. And then she ended up taking over when I left. And she had those design skills. And I don't know. I feel like there's something there about stepping out in faith and just trusting that what you need will come. And also taking the time. Like it's okay to do baby steps, to recognize, okay, we can change up our design a little bit, be more consistent in an area, but don't feel like you have to do it all by tomorrow. This can be something that
yeah.
you put into effect over time.
Hmm.
And if you want to talk to Extend about some design work or brand colors or logo work, we're always happy to talk with you about about potential projects, you can email us at support@extendwebservices.com. We also have a blog on our website, extendwebservices.com. Click on free marketing resources, and we will be intentional about adding some material there that can help you with making sure you're taking the next best steps when it comes to design work. This has been so fun. It's always fun talking with you too. Thank you guys for being on this, and thank you for tuning in today for another Marketing Minute on the Pregnancy Help Podcast.